Hi there. In this video, I'm going to be looking at inventory management in relation to operations strategies. So firstly, inventory management. Really, inventory or stock, it's the raw materials, the work in progress, so the not quite finished yet, and the finished goods that a business has on hand at any particular point in time. Okay? Now, this refers to we get to stock. When you get to finance, you'll find that stock falls into the current asset category on a balance sheet because it's something that could be and is generally converted into cash within 12 months because it's hoped that you will sell it. Okay. Now, there are some advantages of holding stock, meaning that consumer demand can be met when there is stock available. So if all of a sudden there's a spike in consumer demand for your product, you've got it there ready to go in a storage facility. It reduces lead time between order and delivery. If you've got stock on hand, it means that the time it takes from when the order is placed to when it's fulfilled is a lot shorter because you're not making it from scratch. You've already got it there ready to go. The stocks can be distributed more readily. And it gives the business the opportunity to make immediate revenue. You can sell it straight away because it's there ready to go. So you have the opportunity to make money from the sales a lot quicker than if you had to, again, make it from scratch and wait until it's finished before you can sell it. However, with any advantages, there's always going to be disadvantages as well. Now, in the supply chain management section of operation strategies, we did look at warehousing and storage. Okay, now there are some disadvantages with holding stock in that as well. There are costs associated. There's storage fees. There's handling. There's security. If it's something that needs to be cold, you need to increase the costs when it comes to refrigeration. Or if it's something that needs to remain hot, again, increased costs when it comes to heating. The resources have gone into the stock and are now used. Now, what that means is you could have a warehouse, let's say, full of computers, okay, and they could be sitting there for 6 months. Now, all the plastic, all the the metal, all the human resource hours that have gone into making them are now gone. You can't use them again. So you now need to sit with those computers for 6 months in that storage facility, and you can't really use the materials that have been used for it again. Okay? However, that also leads to the next thing about cost of obsolescence. Basically, any stock that remains unsold, that's it. It's now obsolete. And this is more so the case, for example, with technology. If you're manufacturing computers and you don't sell them straight away, and you're sitting on a million computers in a warehouse, firstly, the resources have gone into that stock. They're now used. You're not going to be able to get it back. But it also means that with the rapid growth of technology, those laptops are now worthless. Okay, the technology in them is already old. So, again, no one's going to buy them because they're old. So the cost is really, you've really wasted a lot of money there. Okay? Now, when it comes to valuing their stock, we're going to work through a few scenarios here to try and make this a bit easy to understand. So, this is the scenario. Now, I know it looks complicated. However, I've tried to color code it in order for it to be a bit easier. So, when it comes to inventory valuation, we've got batch A, batch B, and batch C. Now, we're going to assume that batch A is mobile phones that were purchased in January, batch B in February, and batch C in March. Okay? Now, in February, batch A, the business bought 1,000 phones at $100 each. Okay? And they sold them for $150 each. Okay. Now, the total cost of buying those phones is $100,000. Okay. Then in February, they bought another 1,000 phones. However, they bought them for $110 each. Okay? And they sold them for $160 each. Now, the total cost in buying all those phones in February is $110,000. Okay? And then in March, they bought batch C. So they bought 500 mobile phones for $120 each. So the cost of buying them has eventually gone up at $120 each. And they sold them, though, for $180 each. Now, the total cost of buying all those phones is $60,000. Okay, so 1,000 times 100 gave it 100,000, 1,000 times 110 gave us the 110,000, and 500 times 120 gave us the 60,000. Okay, now I've color coded it on the bottom of the slide there. So the total sales. Okay, now these are just hypothetical numbers put in for the scenario. Okay, so in January, they sold 500 phones, okay? And again, they were selling them for $150. In February, they sold 900 mobile phones, and they sold them for $160 each, okay? And in March, they sold 800 mobile phones, and they sold them for $180 each, okay? So the math down the bottom would be 500 times 150, so $75,000. That's how much they made in January, okay, just from selling them. In February, 900 times 160, they made 144,000 there, and in March, 800 times 180, they made $144,000. Okay, so the 75,000 plus the 144,000 plus 144,000. Okay, that leaves us with $363,000 in sales, okay, in revenue. Okay, so the first inventory valuation method we'll look at is called FIFO, first in, first out. Now, this method of pricing your stock or your inventory assumes that the first goods purchased are also the first goods sold. So therefore, the cost of each unit sold is the first cost that was recorded. Okay, now again, we'll go through the scenario again. The issue with this is, it may understate costs. Okay, so the costs could be low. And it could mean, though, that your gross profit is actually going to be higher than what it really is. Okay, so again, we'll look at the scenario. So, the first goods bought were the ones in batch A in January. Now, they were bought for only $100 a phone. Now, FIFO assumes, again, that the first goods bought are the first goods sold, so therefore the first price recorded is the one that you're going to use. Okay? So the first cost that was recorded is $100 per phone. Okay? Now, that's lucky for this business because over the course of the 3 months, the price of buying all those phones has actually gone up. Okay? So the first cost that they've got recorded is actually very low. So on the right-hand side, on the top of that slide, I've put down basically their gross profit. So the total sales, we already found out, was $363,000, minus the cost of sales. Okay, so the 500 phones plus the 900 plus the 800 gives us 2,200 phones. Now, the first cost recorded was $100. So we're going to assume then that that's the one we're going to use, and 2,200 times 100 gives us $220,000. So what this valuation system is showing us is that if you use FIFO, you've actually understated your costs because between January and March, it's actually gone up. So you're actually saying that your costs are lower than they really are. But with that in mind as well, it means that you're actually saying your gross profit is a lot higher, okay? They've made $143,000 of gross profit. Now, another way of valuing inventory is through LIFO, last in, first out, okay? Now, this method of pricing inventory assumes that the last goods purchased are the first ones sold, okay? So therefore, the cost of each unit is the last one. Okay, as opposed to FIFO, which uses the first cost recorded, this one uses the last cost recorded. Now, the issue with this one is it could mean that your costs are overstated and your gross profit then is understated. So let's look at a scenario here. Now, it's the same scenario as in FIFO. However, you'll notice that the numbers in the top right-hand corner of the slide has changed. Okay, so we still have the same total sales, so $363,000. However, the total cost of sales has changed. Okay, now whereas in FIFO, which assumed that the first ones bought are the first ones sold, so they use the first cost. Well, of $100, that gave us $220,000 as a total cost of sales. In LIFO, however, because we use the last cost recorded, which is $120, we've actually got $264,000 as a cost of sale. Now, just by sheer coincidence, this scenario has actually meant that the price of buying those phones has actually gone up. So, however, that might not always be the case. So this is a hypothetical in this case here. However, as you'll see in the top right-hand corner of the slide, that the gross profit that this business has made by using the LIFO scenario is only $99,000. Okay? Now, compared to the gross profit made using the FIFO scenario, this one here has actually gone down. So, as I said in this previous slide, in the LIFO scenario, it could overstate your costs, which has happened here by an extra $20 per unit, and it's understated our gross profit. It's actually lower than in the FIFO scenario. Okay, now there's no perfect scenario here. And finally, the last form, I guess, of inventory valuation is JIT, just in time. Okay, now, this is an inventory management approach that ensures that the exact amount of material inputs will arrive only as they are needed. Okay, so there's nothing sort of sitting in a storage warehouse. It arrives just as they need it. Okay, this is more responsive to consumer demand because it means that you can very quickly alter your operations process, your transformation process, to meet what consumers want. Okay, you can quickly add in more or add in less, and there's less holding costs. Okay, you're not paying for a storage facility full of stuff that you're probably not going to use. Okay, however, it requires a very flexible operations process. Okay, you really need to make sure that your operations process can keep up with this. Okay, if they're not very flexible and all of a sudden something happens, you might find that this is actually going to do the business more harm than good. The next video in this HSC operation series is quality management. However, I hope this video on inventory management has proven valuable. Thank you.